sorry, Advanced Communicator Silver Award. So, but he's here tonight just to practice a speech. He's calling it an independent speech. So it's not part of his minutes, it's not part of his bronze speeches. It's going to be 5 to 7 minutes long, and the speech title is Someone to Talk to. And what he hopes to do is to establish emotional connection with his audience. And of course, and I had forgotten that he was here a few weeks ago, that he actually gave a speech about Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So he's definitely an advanced speech giver, and I'm sure he's going to give a fine speech. So Jeff, if you want to come on up.
And if you don't mind just having her hand out, I'm just looking to get some very quick feedback. So if you have a second, just jot in my form that she's going to give you.
I'm sorry, you did mention you wanted to do that. So he has his own evaluation that he's going to ask us to fill out.
Do you have any others?
Yes, yeah. Does everyone have one?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for handing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So Jeff, if you want to come on up. Jeff Davis.
It's the end of an era. Derek Jeter just retired. I can't believe it. I remember being 10 years old and looking up to him so much. I mean, he was just that young, confident, but very respectful shortstop for the New York Yankees. Now he's retired. I've always loved the game of baseball. I've played my entire life. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. I'm going back to the beginning of my high school years, all the way up through the end of my high school years. Nearly a decade ago, fall of 2006. I'm playing football, and the season just went horribly. It wasn't just me, it was a lot of people in my grade, but we didn't get any playing time. I mean, not even 1 second. I said, all right, I love football, and I'm pretty good at it, but baseball is where it's at. Baseball is my sport. So as I was a little frustrated with football, I put all of my energy into training for baseball. I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to quit the ski team because I want to train non-stop the entire winter. He was like, Jeff, why do you want to quit? I mean, just have fun. It's your senior year. Enjoy the moment. I said, no, I really want to train. I want to go all out. I want to be prepared. So I did quit the ski team, and I had non-stop the entire winter, every day in the cage, just going all out. Tens of thousands of dollars spent on coaches. Some of it my money, some of it my dad's money. Now let me be very clear. I wasn't one of those players who had all these coaches but wasn't good. I played on the absolute top travel teams for Connecticut, summer baseball teams. And we played against the best players in the country, traveling to states such as Florida, Georgia, California, Ohio, and had some amazing competition. On top of that, I got recruited by top colleges to play at the next level. Not a Division I school, but Division II schools and Division III schools. And hey, I'm pretty proud of that accomplishment. Not everyone can say they got recruited by a college to play at the next level. So I had all of my eggs into this basket of baseball. All of my self-worth was wrapped up in being on the team. I wanted it so bad. I wanted to prove that I was the best because I was one of the best players. I was getting recruited. I got into great schools. And I remember that final tryout. It was a scrimmage now. We're playing against another team. It's a Division I pitcher. He's a recruit. And yes, it's not an official game, but it's a real game towards the fact that we're scrimmaging and playing. And our players are striking out, and some of our best hitters were grounding out. And I got up there, and I was like, I'm going to show the coach everything that I've done. And I crushed a double off of the center field fence, almost a home run. One of the only hits against this Division I pitcher. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was like, yes, I finally proved to my coach I can do it. All my hard work paid off. On the way home on the bus back to the locker room, the captain of the team named Kevin, great guy, very sincere guy, one of my good friends, looked me right in the eyes and he said, you earned this. You played so hard, you trained all winter long. I know you're going to be a starter. When we got back into the locker room, the coach took out his sheet and called the names of the players who were on the team. My name was not called. I was cut from the baseball team. That shocked me. I had all of my self-worth wrapped up in being on this team. And when I was driving home, I remember I had a string of the most destructive, defeating thoughts I've ever had. And it was the 3 thoughts in a row of I'm nobody, I'm worthless, I'm a failure. I remember those 3 thoughts. I'm nobody, I'm worthless, I'm a failure. And I couldn't shake that negative, broken record thought stuck in my mind. And I was driving home, and I've had dark moments in my life, but I truly wanted to end my own life in that moment. I was in the car, and all of my self-worth was being on that team. How am I going to tell my college coach who recruited me to play at a Division II school? How am I going to tell my sister who's going to come down and watch me play? How am I going to tell all my friends, my family who expected me to be one of the best players in the state of Connecticut? I didn't know how to tell anybody. And that night I had a rope in my hands, and I came very close to committing suicide. Almost as close as you can be. This is actually the first time I've ever revealed that. I mean, I've never done this speech before. It's the first time I've ever said that, but I'm old enough now that I can discuss it. I am so lucky, blessed, and grateful from the bottom of my heart, from the utmost depths of my soul, to have 2 wonderful, loving, sincere parents. And I am so incredibly grateful. I emphasize that because I had someone to talk to. I told them I felt worthless, that I felt like nobody, that I wanted to end my own life, and they helped me get out of that rut, step by step, become the person I am today. I didn't think I had anyone to talk to. I was embarrassed to look other people in the eye because I felt like such a failure. But having my parents is what saved my life. If I didn't have them to talk to, I would have let go of that rope and I would have died. The way to get through your dark night of the soul is to talk to somebody. You may not have parents that you want to talk to. That's okay. Talk to a friend, a colleague, a relative, an acquaintance, anyone who will listen. The way you get through that dark moment is by disclosing yourself to somebody else. Let the light in. As Brian Tracy says, when you reveal that dark secret, you feel like a load is lifted off your chest. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to go venting to a bunch of strangers or something like that. It just means someone you care about, someone who knows who you are. They can help you. They'll be there for you, and they'll push you forward. They will give you that little spark inside you that will ignite. And no matter how dark things seem, no matter how worthless you feel, you'll get through it. I know what it's like to hit rock bottom and think there's no way out. But I also know what it's like to hit the mountaintop. Talk to someone. They will help you. Thank you. First time I ever gave that.
So if you'll kindly take a few minutes to use the evaluation sheet that I handed out and evaluate Just Talk. One more minute. Okay, finishing up. Our next speaker is going to be Art Eric, and introducing Art is Ann. Me too. Ann will be introducing Art.
I've been looking forward to hearing Art speak. I haven't heard you give a speech. I've heard you give table topics, and they're really pretty good. He's giving speech number 9 from The Confident Communicator, and he is going to persuade us, and I don't remember the title. What's the title? Did you tell me?
The title is, It's Been Over 100 Years, It's About Time We Get This Right.
It's been over 100 years. It's about time we got it right. Please welcome Art Carey.
Thank you. If I seem a little monotone, it's a little bit of allergies, but also I'm coming off such a great speech that I'll probably seem a little monotone. So, anyway, what I'm here tonight to talk about is a topic that I've really been kind of impartial to. Didn't really think much of it. But if really pushed, I would have sided with the status quo is just fine. But the status quo is not fine. Over the past month, I've become convinced that we need to have these sports teams change their names and no longer reference Native Americans. The Atlanta Braves, the Washington Redskins, the Cincinnati Indians, the Chicago Blackhawks. These teams need to change their names. Now you may say, why such a change? We've been impartial, really haven't really thought that much about it over your whole life. And really it was because I was naive about the true plight of the Native Americans in this country, which in a way sort of surprised me. I mean, I took American history in grammar school, in high school, and actually 2 semesters of it in college. But I never really learned about the plight and really what they had endured. And this really changed about a month ago. I had a great opportunity. I spent a day visiting the cliff dwellings in Mesa Verde, Colorado. That's in the Four Corners section of the United States. And I found it really fascinating. And one of the parts that during that day that really intrigued me was that these very elaborate structured homes, you may have seen pictures of them at one point, maybe in your geography books, were very elaborate, but it struck me that they had been inhabited between 700 and 1400 AD, which is way before the founding of the United States. And I never really thought about that perspective of somebody being here so long before the United States was formed. But later that night, I had another really wonderful experience, and I had the opportunity to see and go listen to one of the last living American Navajo code speakers. He's one of the remaining 28, and at 90 years of age, he spoke for an hour with no notes, several cups of coffee, to a small group of us. It was about 20, 25 of us. And it really intrigued me. I mean, here he was, having been brought up an awful lot by his grandfather, who would have been born in the late 1800s. And was able to tell him first and secondhand stories of the movement of the Navajo Indians to northern Arizona. And here, just at the age of 19, he was now on the front lines of Iwo Jima as a coach speaker. And he had no resentment at all towards any of this. His only resentment was that it wasn't until 1968 where he was allowed to talk about what he had done during the war. He was never able to tell his father what he had done in the war. He was never able to tell his fellow soldiers or even talk to his fellow coach speakers about what occurred during World War II because it wasn't declassified until 1968. And that really was his only frustration that he let out. But I'm digressing. With this renewed interest, I felt I needed to learn more, so I actually purchased a book which chronicled the 500 years between Christopher Columbus and today about the interaction between the white people and the Native Americans. And it's really a great collection of a lot of original documents from treaties that were written, a lot of interviews that were done. And listening to this and reading about it, I really realized that they had a very difficult time. I mean, many people really consider it a genocide, that the population had been reduced by 90% during the first 400 years after North America was discovered. Now, this was primarily through infectious diseases, but also through starvation from all the relocations. In the relocations, many of these Native Americans were sent to totally different parts of the country where their means of livelihood or providing for themselves and their families was now suddenly changed, and they found it very difficult. And then once they'd been resettled, treaties were constantly being broken and their property was being reduced, and often they were given opportunities to sell their land for very little money, and because of their dire straits, they often sold out their property. But once again, I'm digressing. The issue here is the use of these names, and the arguments are made that, well, this isn't really so bad. You know, look at Notre Dame, they call themselves the Fighting Irish. They have a silly little leprechaun as a mascot. But it's a very different thing to make fun of your own culture and your own background than to utilize somebody else's. But the real issue here is how they're represented through these mascots and through these names. And even if you go to Webster's dictionary, it clearly says the term redskin is derogatory and should be avoided being used. I mean, in reality, it's really not a lot different than the N-word, which we hear so much about. And here we have our nation's capital, their football team, being called the Redskins, and this needs to change. And the other reason it needs to change is, unfortunately, this is really the introduction to so many children about American Indians, or even to many Americans. And their view is really misrepresented. I mean, this is a proud people with a proud heritage, and to have it trivialized through these sports names needs to stop. So for 100 years this has been going on. It's been since the late 1800s, and it's about time it's changed.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
What a great speech. So if you would take a few minutes to evaluate Art's speech, there should be evaluation sheets on the table. If anyone needs one, please raise your hand. I'll make sure you get one or two. wrapping up. One more minute. Half a minute. Our next speaker is Glenn Sharp, and introducing Glenn is Michelle Kane. Michelle Kane.
Well, tonight we're going to hear a speech from Glenn. It is from his entertaining speaker manual. The title of his speech is Never Give Up, 5 to 7 minutes. And what he wants us to be listening for are the use of crutch words. The speech itself, its objectives, calls for the use of vivid imagery, bringing the audience in to the speech, and of course, that it is entertaining. So these are the things we're going to be listening for, and if you would, please help me welcome Glenn.
It was always darkest before the dawn. And I heard that a lot, and it made me think of, okay, things are, it's really bad, but when things are really bad, just around the corner is the light at the end of the tunnel, and things will go well. Well, it was 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact, a man by the name of James Tillman gave a speech at the Madison Library. I can't remember what the actual name of it is, but James Tillman, for those of you who don't know, back in 1988, he was arrested for a brutal rape of a white woman. He was black. He was arrested for the rape of a white woman who was brutally raped, and she picked him out of a lineup, actually of a photo lineup, and he never did it. He was wrongly arrested. He was wrongly accused. What happened was he was at home. This was 1988. He was at home, and he was waiting. His mother was cooking dinner on the stove, and he was really looking forward to it because it was his favorite meal. And all of a sudden, the cops come bashing on his door. His mother opens the door. They run right in and they grab him, and it's like, what's going on here? What's going on? And he says, they said, you're being arrested for rape. And what happened was a woman came out of the bar. She went to a car, and her assailant, as she tried to close the door, her assailant grabbed the door. They started to fight, and she came out the worst end. She was, I don't have the pictures with me, but they were very graphic. And she, like I said, she was raped. She was also knocked unconscious. And when she was found, she gave a description of the people. And I just want to add, James Tillman, he's not a bad guy, but he wasn't a saint. He did get arrested a few times. Misdemeanor charges, they were for assault. And what happened was most of the time it was considered a hand-to-hand combat. He might have served maybe a day or two in jail, nothing more, paid a fine. And he lived in East Hartford. He still lives in East Hartford, and it was in the project area. So it was either fight or you get destroyed. So however, he did have a job though. He worked at a car. Well, actually, he had a few jobs: car dealership, baker, car wash. He was really into cars. He knew everything about cars. He knew how to drive them. He owned a couple of cars himself. However, but he wasn't rich. He wasn't rich by any stretch of the imagination. He lived pretty much hand to foot, or hand to mouth. And that day, when he found he was getting arrested for rape, he says, "Oh my God, there's no way it's me. They'll find out it's not me, and I'll just go back later on tonight, and I'll go back up those stairs, and I'll have that dinner my mother was cooking for me." Well, unfortunately, that was the last time he ever went through that door or climbed up those stairs, or climbed down those stairs in this matter. He was picked out immediately, and his bail was set up to over $1 million, money he just did not have. and money his friends did not have. So he decided, well, he was gonna fight this no matter what, and he was in jail for, before his trial came, 5 years, as a matter of fact, from 1988 to 1993. He spent time in jail waiting for his trial to take place. He had a public defender, and he put a lot of faith in this public defender. The only problem was he found out the hard way that public defenders and the prosecuting attorneys, they tend to work hand in hand. They tend to, how shall we say, they try to mediate, like, okay, well, like, let's take a plea deal. Okay, well, and that's what he tried to do, that's what this public defender tried to do with James Tillman. He said, look, if you plead guilty, you already spent 5 years in jail, you'll just spend 1 more year in jail. He says, James Tillman said, what, I didn't rape anybody. That is something I would never do. My friends, my family, they know I would never do anything like that. And plus the fact, if I go to jail, I mean, the thing is, rapists, child molesters, rapists, they're on the bottom of the food chain. They'll kill me. So he decided to go to trial, and he went to trial, and he was found guilty. And so anyways, as a matter of fact, he was sentenced to 45 years, as a matter of fact. And he was down in the dumps. His mother was devastated. It was a terrible situation. But he was with a group of guys he knew from the old neighborhood that said, look, James, we know you'd never do anything like that. So he was pretty well protected. But there was someone there who tried to confront him, made sure was brought out that what he was there for. He came face to face with the guy. The guy was going to try to, extort money from him, or pound him into oblivion, shall we say. James Tillman knocked him out totally. And of course, he had to spend time in solitary confinement for it, but he got out of it. And all through that time, he tried to file appeal after appeal after appeal. One of the appeals was that the lineup that they showed, his picture was considerably smaller than the rest, so it focused in on so the woman focused in on his picture. Also, the jury, it was all white. He was black. It was all white. He could not afford. He had his public defender was ineffective. His defense, a few things he would bring up is, like, one, the picture was too small. Secondly, the car that was used, the victim's car was a stick shift. The assailant tried to drive away with it. It ended up ruining he ended up ruining the clutch on it. And James Tillman, he knew clutch, taking cars back and forth. He would have had no problem driving the car away, escaping. However, he did file appeals, and at one point, after 15 years, his appeals were all exhausted, and he was ready to give up. He even sent in a letter to the Innocence Project. They ignored him. However, there was one prisoner that in the jail who was only there for a short time, and he was getting picked on, and James Tillman fought for him, and everyone knew about this guy again. He said, James, when I get out, I'm gonna have the Innocence Project cover for you, and he's get you out of jail. And James Tillman was like, yeah, right, because he tried himself, and it never happened, nothing happened. However, there was one big fight that James Tillman got in. He was put in solitary confinement, and he was chained down to the bed. He really gave the guards a real hard time. It was a pretty bloody battle, and he was in there for hours. And then he was trying to struggle to get up, and he was screaming at the top of his lungs. And then all of a sudden, he felt an automatic this overwhelming calm come over him, as he said he finally found Jesus, shall we say. That's what his words were. And then the very next day, the Innocence Project, people from the Innocence Project came to visit him. They said, we think you have a case that you were wrongly convicted. And in 1997, through DNA, they found out that he was not the assailant. He found out there was another person in his neighborhood who was the assailant. And after 18 and a half years, it was finally let out, and he got $5 million in damages from the United States, from the Connecticut government. It was amazing. And then afterwards, he wasn't bitter about it. He talked about forgiveness. He forgave his accuser. He forgave the defending attorney. He forgave the prosecutor. He forgave everybody for what had happened. He just said, well, remember, never give up, because remember, it's always darkest with the dawn, but never give up, because if you give up, you're done with, you just accept life as defeat. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. What a fascinating story. So now take a few minutes to evaluate Glenn's talk. And I'm going to give you a minute and a half, if that's okay, because we really need to move on. We have one more speaker, and then we have our table topics, and then our evaluations. Okay. If you could wrap up your evaluation.
You want to call me?
Oh, good.
Our fourth speaker this evening, I'm excited to hear, is Cecily, who is giving her icebreaker. She's our newest member. And Sandy Morgan will be evaluating her and introducing her. Sandy Morgan, please.
Well, it's a real pleasure tonight to introduce our newest member, Cecily Barron, who Deb just told you is giving her icebreaker. It's always exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. The title of her speech is Finding My Voice. She plans it to be 4 to 6 minutes. And she wants us to look for certain areas. She wants to make sure she does not slur her words, and she wants to be able to make sure everything is articulated well. Articulated. So, without further ado, Cecily.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak tonight. I greatly appreciate it. My presence here in front of all of you in this room full of Toastmasters is a step along the way in a journey that has been extremely important to me. That's because speaking has never come easily to me. Now that might come as a surprise given my apparently outgoing nature. However, sharing out loud what's inside of me is one of the essential challenges of my life. To begin with, I was quite a shy child. When I was with family and friends, I did fine. But with people that I didn't know very well, I tended to be very quiet. And looking back on it, I think it came from two things. First of all, I was a people pleaser. So if I didn't know somebody, I wasn't sure how to make them happy, so I just stayed quiet. The other factor was that I had a very smart older sister. And with the reasoning of a child, I decided that if she's super smart, I couldn't possibly be, right? So I kept quiet because I thought I wouldn't sound intelligent. Shyness in a child is not remarkable, so except for what happened next, I wouldn't have much of a story to tell you tonight. Fast forward to 3rd grade. There were 3 classrooms of children at my school in 3rd grade, and for the first time we were regrouped and we were given specialty teachers for English instruction. And I was placed with Mrs. Ginter. And one day we were discussing a book that we'd read, and she posed a question. And I bravely raised my hand and she called on me. I have no idea what I said. I don't remember her exact question or the words that she said to me. But what I vividly remember is this. The gist of what she said was that my answer was the stupidest response she had ever heard. Now, many children, most children probably, would just brush that off. But I could see from the vantage point of an adult that that comment had a profound effect on me. In fact, that moment I erected a barrier between my heart and my mouth, right here. And it really effectively silenced me in many, many ways for literally decades to come. Thereafter, I was very afraid of sharing my opinions. I was afraid that I would sound stupid. I was afraid that someone would yell at me, like Mrs. Ginter did. I sure didn't please her. And that was that. You know, I really felt like I would make someone unhappy. So, fortunately, I wasn't completely silent. Through my years in school, I would participate when it came to factual responses. So, math class, science, or a subject that I knew very well. I would feel comfortable with that. And the same goes with social conversation. Also through writing, through essays or written exams, I could express my heart. And so that bolstered my confidence through the success that I would have in that way. Also, somewhere along the way, I discovered the excitement and the confidence that comes from hitting your fears head on. And I really have come to live by the maxim, identify your fear and go there. And through that process, I started chiseling away at that wall that I had erected by going after leadership roles and also speaking to bigger groups and to people unknown to me. And this is really scary, but slowly over the years I did that through Girl Scouting, through being a resident advisor in the dorms at college. As a young adult, I led a Girl Scout troop for a number of years and also started a lobbying committee in Chicago for the Sierra Club and spoke to legislators. And then, of all things, I actually made a career out of speaking. For 7 years, I led corporate seminars in negotiations and sales and management. So, certainly, I had come a long, long way since 3rd grade. But all of this progress had one thing in common, and that was I was speaking from my head, and not from the deepest and dearest places inside of me. And then 15 years ago, I started a book club. Again, you know, that talking in a book club probably doesn't sound like any big deal for most people, but for me, the idea of sharing opinions and feelings and speaking spontaneously in a free-form discussion, that was still terrifying for me 15 years ago. But once again, flying straight in the face of my fears served me well, and soon I reveled in that freedom and the release that I got from using my full voice in that small group setting. And so I'm here tonight because I want to experience that in a larger group setting. I'm hoping that through Toastmasters, I will be able to learn more about not just speaking with my mind, but with my heart and my total being to larger groups. And I've come to so greatly appreciate that moment in time with Mrs. Ginter, because she set me on this journey. So I'm very appreciative of that. I'm appreciative to each and every one of you for allowing me this practice, for the feedback that you'll be giving me tonight and in the future, and most of all, for allowing me to join you on this wonderful Toastmasters journey into the world of speaking. Thank you. I meant to say I also want to become urbane.
Thank you, Cecily. You're the first one, I believe, to use the word
Yeah.
urban this evening. Please take a few minutes to evaluate Cecily's